Tuf, eu estava na era do.
Bem,
Oi.
obrigado de novo por vocês terem vindo se juntar a nós. Thank you for you coming and joining us. Hoje a gente, dentro do nosso programa de intercâmbio, a gente tem hoje mais duas palestras. Queria muito agradecer a professora Cláudia Bonecker, professor Roger, por virem contribuir com o nosso programa de intercâmbio e agradecer a presença de vocês todos aqui, participando com a gente. I would like to thank Dr. Cláudia Bonecker and Dr. Roger who were able to come and help us in this change program. And so today we're going to have a lecture for Professor Cláudia Bonecker talking about zooplankton and other things, and also Dr. Roger talking about the studies in not only with the monitoring the benthic community, but also with other studies in ecosystem approach, right? So, Claudinha, muito obrigado por sua participação, por estar aqui. Pode começar quando você quiser. Tá bom? Obrigado.
Okay. Boa tarde. Thanks, Felipe, to invite us to talk about something that you did or studied in our lab. And thank you, Professor Kina and the students for coming here. It's a pleasure for us. Thank you so much. So we will try to explain or tell you something about zooplankton in the floodplain during our research in our lab with Professor Felipe and Professor Fabio and all our students. We will talk about biodiversity, reservoir impacts, oligotrophic condition, exotic species, damage and no damage river, climate change, social results, and some goals to the future, to the next studies in our lab. First of all, you know that in the floodplain you have many scales to study or to do your research. Regional scale, when you think about the floodplain as a big or complex ecosystem. Local scale, when you think about different environments, river, channel, and lagoon, open lagoons, or lakes, open lakes, and isolated lakes. And when you think about habitats, you have the macrophytes, cover the open water or without macrophytes, and many kinds of macrophyte species. And in the temporal scale, you know, you have the dry season and flood season. Here is the field station. You'll be there last week. You were there last week. Do you remember this tree? And so it's on, I think, 207. You have a good flood, a big flood. So when you think about to study the community, aquatic community, you have to think about this scale, all of this, spatial scale and temporal scale. Oh, sorry. No. Here's the most important community, you know that, because first of all, I think to talk about other communities, but I remember that you have to do some work with zooplankton, the students. So I try to show you more things about the zooplankton. Zooplankton is a community with, oh, sorry, I have problems with my English and with the computer, but I try. So you have many species for different groups, rotifers, Cladocera, copepods, and testate amoebae in our sample. So you have nowadays around 634 taxes to found or register, to found in the floodplain environments. Open order and close the macrophytes too. And another part of this community contributes to biodiversity of the community. This is the hatching eggs, or you can call about passive community. These eggs are produced by the females when the environmental condition is not very well. So they lost these eggs to the sediment. It's an example. It's a Parthenogenes eggs and a hatching eggs, the difference. How do you know what is a hatching eggs, for example? So it represents a pool of the species, can maintain the biodiversity in the environment, and more important maybe the genetic variability. So they could tell about what was or what were the environmental conditions in the environment 1 month ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, and sometimes 100 years ago. So it's important to study, and you have some studies like that with these eggs or this community. As show you is the first we did at the floodplain. Oh, God. We collect some sediments and did a methodology to hatching the eggs. So we found more individuals or more eggs on July with which were relationship with lower water temperatures. It's not good for the zooplankton, so they produce more eggs this time. And when you compare the passive community with the activity community or plankton community, we found some individuals that it wasn't found yet in the plankton, Pseudodaphnia reticulata. We found only with the hatching eggs. And we found another species, no planktonic species, and you relationship that with the hydrical stress. They are we relationship the high eggs production, hatching eggs production. And another time we compare the similarity between the hatching eggs and the plankton community. So we found that during the winter or dry season, there was a low similarity, a relationship also with hydrological stress, and during the beginning of the floods or wet season, you have more high similarity between the two communities, and because it increased the condition, the environmental condition to survive the eggs or the species that she hatched. Well, do you know this map? Angelo showed you yet, but we'll talk about something about the reservoir impacts on the zooplankton community. Here's the trash without reservoir in the basin, and here's the field station that you were there, yeah? So, when Porto Primavera closed, or the reservoir was built in 1998, there was a big change with the days in the flood period, flood season and dry season. The dam closed here, so before that you have almost 200 days by flood season and 107 days by dry season, or flood, high water level and low water level. But after that, the built-in the reservoir, you have only 27 days with flood and 200 and 210 days with flood. Major of the years, you have the dry season or low water phase. So it's very impact to the floodplain because you have low water, it's disponível, unable, no, available to the community, to the dynamic of the ecosystem, and so on. So, another impact of the reservoir, you know that reservoir retain the sediments, so some species of tessate amoeba needs the inorganic material to construct their shadows. So, we found in this study that this species depends the inorganic material to be there, so it's not contribute to the diversity to the community, for example. Shell. Another study show nothing. Oops. Show us that in the Paraná River system, we have, during the monitoring of limnological variables, you have a decrease in the Paraná River, the turbate, phosphate, and nitrogen. So it's also not good because they are important to the productivity of the ecosystem. Well, here you can see that in this time, at the same time, the last article, the last study, we have a decrease in rotifer richness during the time when we start the long-term ecological research at the floodplain. The richness of rotifer decrease and the diversity, beta diversity of the community increase. So there are significant change in the composition of the zooplankton at the floodplain. Other study that we did show that some test amoebas also increase when you increase the productivity or other species decrease. Here is a good example of relationship with the total nitrogen. You see that many species decrease without the nitrogen in the water, for example. Considering that the oligotrophic condition in the Paraná River, we did the experiment when you consider free level of eutrophication or state trophic. We consider oligotrophic situation in this one. This one is a mesotrophic situation, eutrophic situation. So we will see all of these graphs that primary productivity it's decrease in oligotrophic situation, as well the biomass, the zooplankton biomass, and the zooplankton production, secondary production, and also the dominance, not so much, but it's a little low in oligotrophic condition. So it will interfere in all dynamic of the food web, because you have in oligotrophic condition low production, primary production, secondary production, as well biomass. When you relationship the secondary production with primary production, you can see in the eutrophication situation you have this one. So it's a problem, or it's a question to discuss about the retain the nutrients due to the reservoir upstream. It's another study, another project. Another project that Professor Felipe coordinates. We collect many samples around the Paraná River, from Primavera Reservoir to Itaipu Reservoir, the beginning of the reservoir, and you can see, and some tributaries, secondary rivers, and some lakes associated with these tributaries. So you can see high diversity in lakes, then in tributaries, and rivers. And you compare the data for composition of the zooplankton commune, you can see that for cladocera and copepods, the Paraná River community is different from the tributaries and lake. But in all these cases, these groups, tributaries and lakes contribute to Paraná River composition when you study only the channel of the river. It's in the same project. You can see also that this is the last point here, close Itaipu Reservoir, and you can see it's a set of species that were represented in all other of the sample station. So this is a collected site, for example, for the all of species. So we start with low species here, and this increase along the channel due to the contribution of the tributaries and lakes. Oh, it's a study that you analyze together two sets of dates, the dates from the floodplain, the PELD, the Ecological Program Long-Term Research, and in another project that we study 30 reservoirs in the Paraná state, in different basins. Here's the littoral, here's the floodplain, close here. So we can see that all natural lakes, no natural areas, not impacts the floodplain dates. You have more richness during the dry and rainy season. Richness, o que está escrito ali? Ah, yes, richness, radio species, accessory, and constant species. All right? This is the term in English, Fê? Yeah? Okay. Only the constant species they're more in the reservoir. In another kind of the species or kind of the diversity, you can see more species in the floodplain or natural environments. So it's good to improve their knowledge for conservation. So how to prove that's important to preserve these natural lakes, because they show more diversity or more species than impacted ones. It is another study with exotic species, Daphne. It's a master cheese. And we collect in all of the sites that I showed before, and in 3 reservoirs upstream Porto Primavera. Ilha Solteira, Ilha Solteira, Jupiá, qual que é o outro? Três Irmãos. Three Brothers. Três Irmãos, Ilha Solteira, Jupiá, Porto Primavera, Rosana, in the Paraná-Panema River, and the same sites in the floodplain, the another study that I showed you. So you can see, you can find Daphne more individuals in this part of the stretch of the map, of all the sites, in Três Irmãos and upstream, downstream Porto Primavera. And when you have the... O que está escrito ali? Ah, phytoplankton abundance. You can find more individuals, the Daphne Lumholtz, when you have more phytoplankton abundance. And you have more occurrence of this Cladocera when you have low species of Cladocera, like a biological resistance, the invasion. And when you increase the distance from, you have more individuals, the density decrease. So the geographic density decrease the abundance of the exotic species, and the increase of phytoplankton density and the increase the density of the exotic species, and will decrease the richness of Cladocera in general. The native community will increase the occurrence of the exotic species. So here's the data, how you have about the exotic species in the floodplain. Sorry, the laser is so close to when you move, where you move. So here you have the data from Chelicotia bostoniense, here the years. For the floodplain, the occurrence, the density in these years. So sorry, 2000, sorry, 2001, 2002, and so on until 2015. Here, only in Iviema River, we have more individuals than in Paraná River all along the time. And Daphne Lumholtz, you found only at the Paraná River, not in the No Damage River in Iviema yet, fortunately. But you have two occurrences, but not data, abundance data in 2022 and 2002 and 2008. So Chelicotia has a more distribution in the floodplain, but mainly in the Iviema system, and Daphne Lumholtz occurred only in Paraná system until now. So now we will show you some data when you compare the damaged river, the Paraná River, and the Iviema River, no damaged river. You know you have these 3 conservation units at the floodplain, 2 federal ones, Diz and Diz, Ilha Grande and Ilhas e Várzeas do Rio Paraná, and a 1 state, Rio Iviema State Park at the area. So consider the dates you have to Paraná River and Iviema River. You can see, it's not zooplankton, it's fish, but you can't, they have more data. They studying there, soon close the Itaipu Reservoir in 1986. So from 1986 to 250, you can see the change in the community. Here's the blue data, the beginning of the data. Here's the 200 and 250. You can see more difference along the river. It's a damaged river. And then we can see in Iviema is not so clear. The composition of fish is more similar along the time. Not so clear or not so easy to see many differences in the composition of fish and no damaged river. Here's a zooplankton data. You compare the composition of zooplankton composition in different lakes associated to Paraná River, Iviema River, and Bahia River. Paraná, Iviema, and Bahia. 2 no damaged rivers and a damaged river. You can see the richness is high in the no damaged river. And you analyze the structure of the composition. The no damaged river is here. It's so different from the Paraná River, is bigger one, and the small one is Bahia River, the composition in Bahia River. Bahia Lakes River, sorry. And here is a model, conceptual model, and you consider that the damaged river basin has these 115 species influenced by turbidity, chlorophyll A, electrical conductivity, and the Iviema River sourced it to 81 species, and Bahia River 77 species, to show again the contribution to tributaries to the Paraná River composition. It's another one. Use the same schedule that I show you, the natural and artificial environments. And when you compare, you have 7 species exclusive to the reservoir, and for natural lakes you have 15 species. So this high biodiversity could be contribute to conservation, the environment, and ecosystem services. Oh, it's for fish again. The species are vulnerable to extinction. And in another, this one is in danger to extinction. I don't know which species they are, but they are in the red list for the species in Brazil. So it's not zooplankton data, to show only that climate change. So Paraná River, the temperature is increased, as well in Bahia and Iviema River. The dates from 96 to 250. And you try to show to the society or population and students what you do at the flood plan, and mainly that many things exist moreover than fish and plants. When you ask a society or a population, local population, where do you see in the river? Fish and plants. So you can try to show them that there are more things than fish, that you have water temperature, oxygen, dissolved oxygen in the water. So for the future, what do you think about or you have to do? You are worried about to identify the minimal discharge of the Paraná River to maintain the ecosystem function, to maintain the biodiversity. Ecosystem function, think about productivity, primary productivity, secondary productivity, and water color or water quality. Maybe some data can contribute to increase the area of the conservation units or contribute to create new ones. Identify the impacts of the climate change on zooplankton body size or biodiversity. The impact of the exotic species in the nativity community. Try to hatching or to identify if the exotic species producing nesting eggs, and if it's nesting eggs, is possible to hatching. And explain its importance. I think you explain to society the importance of the zooplankton in aquatic environments. You can start to explain, do you know a whale? Oh, whale eats zooplankton. And so, or the... Como é que é o desenho? É o desenho do plâncton. Hã? Bob Esponja. Mas how can I say in English? Yes, there's plankton there. And in general, I think you have to think in biodiversity or diversity always, because it's important to maintain the ecosystem and function, and we are part of these ecosystems, all ecosystems you have in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudinha.
If it's someone who needs the lecture, you can take, okay? If someone wants the lecture.
Okay. But we can start with questions. Someone has some questions for the Claudinha lecture. I have one to start. We have talking about the exotic species, right? And we could see here that the exotic species they are here for a long time, but they don't develop big populations, or if develop big populations, they do not persist in our ecosystem, our footprint, right? My question is: is possible to know what factors affecting determine they disappear from our environments? What periods, what environmental conditions determine they do not occur in our footprint?
So, we just start to study the exotic species, first of all. Second one, I don't know if the PELD design experiment it's enough to find them, because you have one sample by environment and 4 times of the year. So I don't know if you have to investigate more the littoral areas. I know that Daphne and Calicote is not a planktonic species, it's a planktonic species. So I don't know. And if you study all of the environments they can occur, you don't know many things about that. Calicote is very common. I think in Brazil you don't find only in Amazon yet, but in all environments, all biomes, you can find. Yeah, I think so. Daphne, it's mysterious. I don't know yet, but in its local area, the density is so low, 500 individuals by sample, for example. So I don't know if this is the problem. But one time, Juliana, Nadson, Ariadne, não sei se a Luzia estava, someone else, some students, did an experiment in Puerto Rico and showed that Daphne lumholt is more resistant than Daphne magna. Daphne gesner, sorry, our native species. In our lab, you can cultivate Daphne lumholtz more days than Daphne gesneri. So it seems these species, exotic species, more resistant. But and they have a big spines. I think it's possible to avoid the predation, fish predation, small individuals for small species. I don't know exactly. I think you need more, a big design maybe. We try to do is when you sampled at the reservoir upstreams, but we didn't find. I don't know, you go there 2 times, 4 times. For a reservoir, to find a cladostra 4 times, not many times. Only if there is a bloom, is a big density, big population. I think so. But who first found Daphne lumholt here is in São Paulo reservoir, I don't remember what, but they never record anymore. I didn't see any publication about that. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said something about the resting eggs having more and drier conditions. Does temperature have to do with any? Like, have you found any, like?
Yes, the time when you have dry conditions here, you have low temperature and low water in the lake. So when the lake is to become dry, and so the water column is go down, the depth, so they also produce eggs. But there are other factors you can find at the literature about that, but you test only oxygen test. You analyze only the temperature and oxygen. I answer you? Okay, thank you.
Mais perguntas?
Oh,
I have
yes.
a question. When you talked about primary productivity, secondary productivity, and different oligotrophic, mesotrophic, were those mesocosm studies?
Yes, mesocosm studies. Yes. You increase the nutrients. We use the oligotrophic condition close the Porto Primavera downstream the reservoir. And the last values we found at the fluid plane, I studies, a mean of that, and then we increase to mesotrophic and then eutrophic condition. And this time you collect the water in Garças Lake, did you go there? To empty the mesocosm, and we found a lot of Daphne roots.
We're going to do the questions right now, right? The interview. So you could do it now, right?
Yeah.
So you can start the interview right now. Who is responsible for the questions? Amber?
Again?
It was supposed to be us, but
Yeah.
I've got the questions.
Are you shy?
No.
yes,
No.
that's my name. Literally.
Those questions.
Yeah.
You want me to do it? It's a picture, so you can zoom in on it. Yeah.
It's a public interview.
Okay, public interviews. Okay. So the first question is, how long have you been involved with restoration and or conservation?
Exactly when we start the PLD program on 2000, so 17 years.
Okay. And what are the restoration conservation goals of your project?
We try to understand the difference between the communities, the zooplankton communities in the two the two systems, Paraná systems, damaged river and no damaged river. Really, we start the studies in Viema River when I did my master in 1991, so far. But the unit, conservation unit not created yet. It was created in 1998. So they think about, no, now you have unit conservation and you need to think what you have the difference from Paraná and Iviema. So I think it's better now. I think so. I can't see it about zooplankton because I didn't compare the data before, because I didn't work in Viema River before 2000s. I work in Bahia system and other students work in Viema River. So you need this data to compare before the unity conservation create and then and after. But for fish, it's better, the conservation. And I think the institute that work there to conserve there, the public institution, are doing a good job and to try to restore the unity, the river, and what about what's happened with the river, and then not only for aquatic fauna, but only terrestrial plants and so on.
The next one is how have those goals been achieved? You kind of talked a little bit about that.
How's going there?
How the goals have been achieved or
Yes, they create the units, conservation unit, yes. And you can also have some found to study the minimal discharge, for example, to maintain the Paraná River.
And the next one is, what challenges have you encountered?
To continue the studies and to understand more what you think about or what you can find about the exotic species maybe, but continues you need more founds and more findings, so on, to do another studies in another scale or in another schedules, design experiments.
Yeah, like you were talking about needing a bigger experiment.
Yes.
More money, more time.
Yes. Students.
Yep. Okay. And you've talked about this a little bit too, but do you have any specific, like, what is the future of your research? What is something that you want to look into?
To maintain the biodiversity at the flood plain, to maintain the ecosystem, the function of the ecosystem, to preserve and conservation.
Okay. What's your favorite part of your research? What's the favorite thing that you do?
Go to the field.
Really?
Yes. Field sampling.
We just did that last week. It was.
I discovered that is my least favorite part.
And to analyze the data and to identify rotifers only.
Rotifers?
Yes.
Why rotifers? Why are they your favorite?
Because I like them.
Is it just the
It's
structure?
little, it's beautiful. It's so small and you can see many things.
I have a more basic question. Your theme, your talk, you mentioned some of this. What is the importance of biodiversity?
What is important in biodiversity?
Right. Why do we want to conserve that, preserve that?
To maintain the ecosystem and function. The ecosystem is the system, because the species has a role. The species has a role in the productivity and so on. And also the variability, genetic variability is important to the future, to evolution. So you need to preserve this part. When you consider only the species, the biodiversity in compare is also include genetic variability and molecular variability and so on, and the role of the species in the ecosystem. So it's important to maintain. But maybe genetic variability, I think it's important to evolution, because evolution is important to preserve the ecosystem also. They change, climate change, many things change, so you need some adaptive scenarios, maybe.
No questions?
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Ok, thank you. Thank you. Eu largo tudo aqui, o que eu faço? Ô Roger, você vai grupar aqui? Você vai fazer pelo celular?